As we resume our studies in Mark's Gospel, we do so with a sense of real apprehension. We know that, humanly speaking, the developing momentum of hostility to Jesus cannot end well for him. And as we read together today's passage, chapter 14, verses 27 to 42, it becomes very clear that the end has now arrived. So let me read this passage to you. Mark begins, "You will all fall away," Jesus told them. "For it is written, I will strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you to Galilee." Peter declared, "Even if all fall away, I will not." "Truly I tell you," Jesus answered, "today, yes, tonight, before the rooster crows twice, you yourself will disown me 3 times. But Peter insisted emphatically, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you." And all the others said the same. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," he said to them. "Stay here and keep watch." Going a little farther, he fell to the ground and prayed that, if possible, the hour might pass from him. "Abba, Father," he said, "everything is possible to you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will." Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Simon," he said to Peter, "are you asleep? Couldn't you keep watch for 1 hour? Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Once more he went away and prayed the same thing. When he came back, he again found them sleeping. Because their eyes were heavy, they did not know what to say to him. Returning the 3rd time, he said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Enough. The hour has come. Look, the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." So as we have followed in the footsteps of Jesus through those events described in the final chapters of Mark's Gospel, we cannot escape, as we have already recognized, the sense of deep foreboding. Jesus is on track to inevitable martyrdom. And Jesus is clearly aware of this and the fact that his death will be no ordinary one. And it's at this point we come to the present passage, one where the teacher almost fears to tread, because there is a real sense that here we are on holy ground. Though much is taking place in these few verses, central to all is Jesus' prayer. And what it emphasizes for us is both the nature of his death and the tremendous personal cost involved. The cost is itself emphasized by Jesus' foreknowledge, and the fact that he will have to face the final steps of his life alone, an acute loneliness, which is stressed and anticipated by the disciples' lethargy in the very face of betrayal that awaits him at the end of our passage. As we notice this, we observe that Jesus' death is described as what we might call redemptive. Allow me to explain what I mean. Those familiar with the Old Testament and who have been following the story would have had no difficulty picking up the allusions behind Jesus' reference to the hour and the cup in verses 35, 36 and 42. Especially in the light of his response to James and John's request to have a place of prestige in his coming kingdom, and his reference there to the cup that he must drink, which we considered some studies ago. Jesus is clearly referring to a sort of chalice that bears the wrath of God that he, Jesus, is to receive from Abba Father's hand and will drink thus consuming in his death all that which otherwise would have been poured out on a sinful human race. So Jesus faces this hour of judgment on our behalf, an hour in which, in our place, he will bear the punishment for our sin and pay the price for our liberation. As we reflect upon this, we realize that this is the point to which the entire story of Mark's Gospel has been leading us. Here is how the Messiah will fulfill his calling. But we also notice that Jesus' death was accompanied by the most indescribable anguish in the hearts of both God the Father and the Son. And we can see this in a number of ways, to some of which allusion has already been made. Thus Jesus' death was experienced with full foreknowledge. While he was confident of his resurrection, as we see in verse 28, he knew that to fulfill the Old Testament scriptures he must suffer a painful death and abandonment by his friends at the point of his deepest need. He knew it would be a lonely path. The pain of desertion is bad enough, but to know it is coming and its full extent must have been awesomely painful. And all this necessitated Jesus' abandonment by his Father. Jesus was profoundly aware of the intimacy of his relationship with God. Here he could call him Abba, a term of intimacy and deep affection. He also knew the awesome power at his Father's disposal, while at the same time deeply conscious that to fulfill the purpose of his coming, that power must be sheathed and the intimacy withdrawn. Then all this required his submission to the will of his Father, that must have torn the latter's heart. We cannot read these events unfolding before our eyes in these verses without recognizing the pain not only of Jesus, but of the one who abandons him to redemptive death for love of us. Finally, there is the ultimate and indescribable cost of being the Holy One, bearing the full wrath of holy God toward a sinful world. What agony this must have laid upon Jesus' shoulders. It's easy to focus upon the failure of the disciples here, but this is not really their story. They function as little more than a backcloth that emphasizes the full horror of Jesus' lonely pathway to the cross. And it is this that we are intended to grasp. Jesus' death was for us, planned by the Heavenly Father with the cooperation of the Son as wrath-bearing and ultimately incomprehensible and indescribable divine partnership of self-giving and costly love, to which we are all bidden to respond.